Okay, we're good to go? Awesome. Well, good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Pirate Parents Live. My name is Carter Fenwick. I'm the Associate Director of Parent and Family Programs. Today with me is Aaron Taylor, one of ECU's Education Abroad advisors, because we are talking about study abroad, if you can't tell from the flags. So if you're watching live and have any questions, you can submit those questions into the chat. We have some study abroad staff members who are monitoring that and can answer your questions. If you're watching the recorded version of this Pirate Parents Live, you can still put questions into the chat. My office will get that notification, so we'll answer your questions there as well. So we can go ahead and get started. And to kick off our conversation about study abroad, I feel like it's appropriate to just talk about what is study abroad and why is this a good experience for students to consider.
Absolutely. So I'm very happy that you asked this question. When you first think of studying abroad, naturally you think it's studying in another country, which it can be, but there's also a lot of other opportunities to engage internationally. So the loose definition of studying abroad is any type of student-driven activity in another country. This can be academics for a short period over the summer or a full semester or even a full academic year. This can be research opportunities, internship opportunities, service learning projects. Any student that goes abroad through ECU or associated with ECU is therefore studying abroad. And these opportunities are vital for our students, especially in today's global economy and globalized world. There's not one aspect of our lives that isn't somehow connected globally or internationally, and it's going to impact students personally by helping them grow into a confident individual and navigate situations that they may not face in the United States or even just being in a new environment. But also academically, they are going to get exposure to other academic systems, classes in another setting, and then of course professionally, as it does enhance resumes and is a great investment into your future, because you are going to be learning those skill sets and getting that experience that you can draw from and transfer into your career. So it's definitely something that I'm passionate about and enjoy helping students find a similar experience that I did, because the only reason I'm here right now is from my own study abroad experiences.
That's awesome. You put that so well. I would not have been able to explain that as well, which is why you're here as the professional talking about this. And you touched a little bit about, there are different opportunities. It's not just taking a class abroad. So can you talk about those different types of study abroad programs that we have here at ECU?
Yes. So we have over 250 different programs through ECU that go to over 65 different countries worldwide. And we like to organize them into three main categories: either an exchange program, a direct program, or a faculty-led program. So direct programs, I'm going to start with those. As the name suggests, you're enrolling directly into the university and you would pay the university abroad directly. So this is a great opportunity for out-of-state students. I'm sure we're going to talk about this a little bit, but obviously the cost of studying abroad is something that I get asked about a lot. And so we try to make it as affordable and as accessible to all students. So for our out-of-state students, you could participate in a direct program that is less expensive than the tuition you are currently paying. On the opposite side, for our in-state students, we have exchange programs, which allow you to pay ECU's tuition. And the only difference is that. The only difference between an exchange program and a direct program is the cost and how you pay. They are going to be offered in the same locations, the same classes are going to be offered, the same programs, it's just the different costs. And then we also have faculty-led programs, which are very popular for our ECU students. These typically run over the summer, but we also have some proposed for spring break. And this is a great option for students that are wanting to study abroad but maybe have some time restrictions or would like a little bit more connection and support while abroad, because these programs you would travel with a group of ECU students led by an ECU professor and take ECU classes. So it would be just like taking classes on campus, you're just transported abroad. So those are kind of the three main categories, and then within those you kind of break them out into your focus, your major, or your internship experience that you're looking for, or even research opportunities. So they either fall under one of those categories, but then what is available is almost endless.
That's awesome. I feel like I'm learning so much through this conversation too, which is awesome. So talking about, you mentioned your degree. You can take a study abroad experience based on your degree.
Yes.
So is it any degree? Is there a specific type of degree that you need to have? And then also talking about, the specific requirements for studying abroad. Are there any other general or specific qualifications that students need to have to study abroad?
Yes, so there are a few eligibility requirements that we ask students to meet just to ensure that they're going to be successful in navigating a college experience abroad. So we do ask for students to have completed 24 credit hours prior to their program's departure. That typically means by the end of the freshman year, they would have completed that requirement and then could study abroad. However, we do have students bringing in AP credit from high school or transfer credit, and that can count as well. We also ask for students to have about a 2.5 GPA. That is a general requirement. It does vary depending on the program. So there may be a couple that are a bit more competitive and may ask for a higher GPA, and then quite a few of our summer programs ask for a lower GPA of 2.0, but in general it's about a 2.5. Other than that, the only other requirement is to be a full-time student and in good academic and disciplinary standing. Again, we try to make it as accessible as possible to students, but we also understand that we need to make sure we're setting them up for success and not putting them in a situation that may be overwhelming. And then as far as the degree, we have programs for every degree at ECU, even if it's a very structured degree such as nursing, engineering, or computer science. A lot of times students will come and say, oh, I didn't think that it would be possible, because they have a very set schedule and very structured degree. The earlier they start thinking about it, the more flexibility they will have, but we do have programs for all majors. It does not matter what you're studying, how far along in your degree you are, we can find something for you to do while you're abroad.
That's exciting. And now we're going to ask, I'm sure the question that is, burning. The burning question is, how does a family or a student pay for study abroad? Is there financial aid, or is there scholarships available for it?
Yes, absolutely. So financial aid does apply to studying abroad. Any regular financial aid that a student receives can be used to study abroad. This is an extension of your ECU education, so all of your ECU resources are still available for that program. So we actually work very closely with Jeff Evans in the financial aid department. He works specifically with our study abroad students to see what their packages look like, what they are eligible for, how to increase those packages. And then we also offer study abroad scholarships. Through ECU, there's about 34, I believe, study abroad specific scholarships, which can be found on the ECU award portal. And that's a great resource. Check that out. You can just create a profile, answer a few questions, and then you have access to all of the scholarships that ECU has to offer. And so I'm highlighting the study abroad specific scholarships, but any scholarship that is received, as long as it doesn't explicitly say it cannot be used to study abroad, can be used to fund that experience. If your student is in the honors college, they get scholarships and stipends that can be used as well. And then there are national scholarship opportunities that we help students navigate. So we share a lot of the application deadlines and information, as well as hold workshops on financial planning. And then one scholarship in particular, it's the Gilman Scholarship. That is for students that receive a Pell Grant that are looking to study abroad. It's a national opportunity, very competitive, but we've had quite a few ECU students be awarded that in the past. I think every semester we have a few students receive that. And we host workshops on how to understand what they're asking for, how to improve your essays, and your chances of being awarded that scholarship. So we have a few in-house scholarships, other scholarships offered through ECU, national scholarships, financial aid does apply, and then we can also look at other fundraising ideas as well. So we work very closely with our students to help them achieve that goal.
That's awesome. And I'm so glad you mentioned the ECU award portal, because we did do a Pirate Parents Live on scholarships and navigating, applying for scholarships back in, I think it was late October of 2021. But that is still on our website and on our Facebook page. So if you're like, hey, have never heard about the ECU award portal since, being a part of, ECU and being an ECU parent and family, go check that out. It's a really great resource. We had a great conversation there, so I will just plug that. And we will continue. One question that I feel is probably a popular question, and might be kind of, I don't want to say a silly question, because no questions are silly, but how can students obtain their passport? Do you assist students in obtaining their passport to study abroad?
Yes, so we actually, for I think the past 4 years, we have been a passport acceptance facility. So
that's awesome.
Education abroad, or the study abroad side of ECU, is located in the International House on campus, which is where you can apply for your passport. We do have to have an appointment, but students can find that information on our website or email us at passports@ecu.edu. We provide all the information they need to bring. We can make photocopies as well, and we are open to the public, so it's not just ECU students or staff or faculty that can use these resources. Anyone in the community can use that as well.
Oh, that's great to know.
We have 4 passport agents in the office, so we have quite a bit of flexibility in terms of schedule and availability, and we definitely try to help our students get access to their passports. Kind of on the same topic, we do advise a little bit on visas, but because visa situations are so country specific and program specific and kind of how long the program may be, we advise a little bit on that, but we provide a lot of resources on how to find more information about visas. So we try to be a one-stop shop for our students.
I love it. I mean, I might be stopping by to update my passport now that COVID restrictions are lifting, so I'll email you about that later. Okay, next on the list that we have to chat today about is what are the typical deadlines or regular deadlines that students need to make sure they are prepared for when applying to study abroad?
Yes, so I will cover our application deadlines first. Everything else is kind of based around those deadlines. So in general, the application is due about 6 months in advance of when the student would be going abroad. So our hard deadlines are for summer programs, January 31st of that same year. And then after that, for fall programs, it would be February 15th of the same year if they're studying abroad. And then spring is September 15th. There is some flexibility depending on the program. So I did talk a little bit about direct program options, and sometimes because you are enrolling in that university directly, their application deadlines may be slightly different. So we can match their deadline, but we typically advise to try to get everything in by our deadline, just because that you'd be ahead of the game at that point. And then based around that, you also want to keep in mind scholarship deadlines. So every scholarship is going to have its own application deadline. All of the ones that my office houses, we make them due around the time of the application deadline. So typically a couple of weeks before, because we understand that you may be making those decisions based around funding that you receive. But then again, national scholarships are going to have their own deadline. So it kind of, that 6-month period before you be studying abroad is where you want to aim for, but you also kind of want to start thinking ahead of the game just for things like scholarships.
Mm-hmm. And that's perfect lead into our next topic or our next conversation. Topic is, when do students need to start planning for this? You talked about those deadlines, so when is a good time for students to start looking at their 4-year schedule and planning to study abroad?
I always like to say it's never too early to start thinking about studying abroad. I also like to say it's never too late, but obviously we do have some application deadlines, but we can work with you based on your schedule as well. The ideal timeline to start thinking of studying abroad is about a year in advance. That gives you 6 months to really understand what you want out of your program, what programs are available for you, what the deadlines are, what scholarships are available, what classes you want to take, if you want to go with a friend. There's so many questions that kind of can be answered during that period before the application is due. So we kind of have 3 application stages or phases of applying to study abroad. The first is research and advising. So when you first start thinking of studying abroad, even if you're thinking, 2 years from now I'm going to go ahead and start looking into it. Talk to your academic advisor, reach out to my office, just to understand what the process looks like. And then when you're ready to apply, you'll have all those answers for you. After the research and advising stage is, of course, the application stage where you get your transcripts, you fill out the questionnaires, things like that. And then after you've been placed, it's the pre-departure and post-decision and pre-departure stage. So that's where we finalize what courses you're going to take abroad, how that's going to come back as ECU credit. Health insurance, that's a big thing we also obviously want to include, and it is required to study abroad. Passport information, visa information, starting to purchase your flights, all of that's done in the post-decision and pre-departure stage. So there's a lot that has to get done, and it can be very overwhelming when you think of it in a whole. So I always recommend, as soon as you have that inkling, go ahead and start looking into it, but the ideal timeline would be about a year in advance.
Good to know, awesome. So we haven't touched base on this, but I know it is obviously something that's going on around the world, is the COVID pandemic and how that has affected, study abroad in the past. It looks like, those restrictions are lifting, and so moving forward, how does the pandemic still affect students wanting to study abroad?
Yes, obviously COVID-19 kind of hit all aspects of life pretty hard. Studying abroad is definitely one of them, and we had quite a few students abroad in spring of 2020. We pulled all of those students back, and then we were not able to send students abroad until this past fall, so about a year and a half later. And we had a successful fall semester studying abroad. We have students abroad right now in the spring semester, and we have summer programs planning as well. So we've learned a lot through that process on how to manage the risk of COVID and other risks of studying abroad in general, as well as preparing our students for what to encounter. I will say the biggest way that COVID has impacted students and will continue to impact students primarily right now is through the preparation process. So we did have to add a new stage to the application where we work with the student to fill out a travel request form where they list the country they're going to, or if it's a program where they're going to multiple countries, we have to list each country and what the current situation looks like, what the country is doing to mitigate COVID, so entry requirements. Do you have to quarantine upon arrival? Do you have to be vaccinated to enter the country? And then what their university is doing. So are they doing single housing, single dorms? Do they have facilities in place if a student needs to quarantine, anything like that? And then what the student is doing independently to mitigate that risk. Are they going to follow social guidelines and social distancing, mask wearing? What does it look like? What are the requirements? So we have a clear picture of what to expect and how to go about preparing the student and ourselves to respond to that situation. That form then has to be approved by a committee and then signed off by the provost before we are allowed to send that student abroad. And once that has been done, we can endorse them going ahead and putting down payments for their program, purchasing tickets. That's another thing we learned, is not to commit any funds until we know that it's a safe program for them to participate in. And we want to protect the student financially as well. I mentioned that health insurance is required. We are also, we weren't just the only ones that learned from this experience. Our healthcare providers that we run through for study abroad health insurance have also adjusted to cover quarantine costs, to cover medical emergencies in that regard. And then I would also say the next phase where they are impacted the most is arriving in the country. If quarantines are required, setting up those facilities, which we help them do, making sure they have access to regular meals and internet and things like that. What does it look like for them? I would say after that, most of their experiences seem to be very, I don't want to use the word normal because I feel like we'll never go back to normal, but comparable experience to pre-pandemic studying abroad. Very similar to their experience here in the US, what they are allowed to do. Not many places have lockdowns currently. Like you mentioned, those restrictions are lifting. And then, so once they actually get in the country, most of those hurdles have been overcome. The only other thing is returning, because the US does currently, again, that's the other thing, is it's constantly changing. But currently the US is requiring a negative COVID test to re-enter the country. So we also work with a student to understand what the situation would be if they did test positive, even if it was a false positive, when trying to return. So a lot of it, honestly, the impact of COVID is just preparation. Understanding what could happen, what to do if that happens, and then providing resources to help navigate that.
As we wrap up, I do have one more question for you. What is your biggest piece of advice or your kind of wrap up to this conversation that you would like to tell our parents and families?
My instinct is always just be like, just do it. Like let's get your student abroad. Let's do it. It's had such a great impact on me personally that I'm just so excited to help other students experience that as well. But a practical piece of advice is there's going to be lots of questions. You're going to have lots of questions. Your student's going to have lots of questions. Situations are constantly changing. So my advice would be reach out. I know we primarily work with the students, but I'm happy to talk to you directly. We can set up meetings to address any questions or concerns that you may have, or to explain in more detail what the programs are like or what to expect. I think it's wonderful if you are already thinking of having your child study abroad. I was lucky enough to have parental support through my experiences, and I understand that also comes with a lot of concern. As I've gotten older, I have a niece and a nephew, they're very young, and I'm like, how did my mom let me study abroad for a year? How did she let me do that? I'm like, I don't want them to go anywhere. But you know, I understand that there may be concerns and questions, so please reach out. I'm more than happy to talk to you guys. Our entire office is. So I think that would probably be my biggest piece of advice, other than just do it.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining me today, Erin. And as Erin mentioned, if you have any questions about studying abroad, reach out to her office. You can email studyabroad@ecu.edu, and that goes not only to her but to the other advisors for education abroad who are just as equipped to assist you, and I'm sure just as passionate about you know, helping your students study abroad. And then also you can go to studyabroad.ecu.edu. That's their website with a lot of resources listed there as well. So you can do a ton of reading before reaching out to them if you would like as well. But that is what we have for you today, and if you have any questions, you can reach out to my office too, and we can get you connected to Erin and her team. But this Facebook Live will be recorded and added to our website, and it will be captioned for accessibility purposes, so you can go to parents.ecu.edu to watch that as well. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.